Welcome to our HBR Turkey special series with prominent governance experts commemorating the 10th year anniversary of Argüden Governance Academy. Today, we're honored to launch this series with one of the most distinguished figures in the realm of governance and one of our advisory council members, Professor Dr. King. Mervyn King is a global authority on corporate governance and sustainability. His journey encompasses his chairing the King Reports and shaping corporate governance in South Africa, chairing the International Integrated Reporting Council, which helped shape corporate reporting practices around the world, and as founder of the Good Governance Academy in South Africa. So please join me in welcoming Professor King. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Let me start by asking you on your work on corporate reporting, which has had a global impact. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in corporate reporting and how you became an advocate for change in this area?
Yes, going back to the 20th century, the dictate then for corporate reporting was the primacy of the shareholder. And it followed the doctrine of Milton Friedman, and various famous cases set precedents that directors should ensure increased wealth for shareholders, so increased share price, increased dividends. But these profits are being subsidized by society and the environment. And that was proved by the turn into the 21st century, when through expedited research with the computer age of the 70s, it was shown that only 20% of the market cap of companies was reflected as additives in a balance sheet according to financial reporting standards. The rest were what today we call the ESG factors, for which there was no reporting guideline. And an initiative was started, the Global Reporting Initiative, of which I became the chair eventually, to set out guidelines as to how to report on these ESG factors. And now they are standards, but the International Federation of Accountants and I, as chair of the United Nations on Governance and Oversight, agreed that to have a financial report and a sustainability report in two separate silos was divorced from reality, because operationally the financial and the non-financial matters are integrated. And so the Integrated Reporting Council was formed, a marriage between the GRI and Accounting for Sustainability of Prince Charles, now King Charles, and that was launched in 2010 at the palace by Prince Charles. And integrated thinking and integrated reporting is the name of the game today. So companies and organizations do not think in silos, they think in an integrated manner. In developing a business judgment model, they look at it through the three lenses of the economy, society, and the environment, and what sustainable development goal will be pertinent to that business and incorporated into the business model. So a real shift away from the original thinking of just looking after the shareholder. And I've had a huge hand in that and led the charge around the world on that. And yes, and let me just say that the Yilmaz Argüden Academy has always been in the forefront of what's been happening from a governance point of view. Governance became a mindless checklist matter instead of a mindful application of the collective mind of a board to what was in the best long-term interest of the health of the company. And it had to be outcomes-based as reporting was becoming outcomes-based. In other words, how the company made its product had an impact on the three dimensions of the economy, society, and the environment. And then we learned through the GFC and the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008 and 2009 that those three dimensions also have an impact on the value of a company. So those things were combined. And today, the IFRS has acquired the intellectual property of all that and has issued standards through the International Integrated Reporting Sustainability Standards Board. So the world has moved in the last few years very quickly, and sustainability reporting, I'm confident in the next 2 years will be mandatory around the world. So there are huge changes in corporate reporting and corporate thinking.
And building upon your work on integrated reporting, can you tell us how you think this approach has changed how businesses view reporting and sustainability practices, and how it has shaped corporate decision-making?
Once the boards decide to do an integrated report, the whole company starts thinking on an integrated basis, which fits in what happens operationally and in reality, that we don't have financial capital in one building and natural assets in another building. All these things are integrated 24/7. And today around the world, I'm proud to say that and organizations like the Argüden consulting organization should be proud to say, in advocating integrated thinking, that I don't think there's any organization or company around the world that thinks in silos anymore. They're all thinking in an integrated manner.
And can you give us some examples that you've also mentioned in your integrated thinking book, which we had actually translated to Turkish to be able to spread in a local context? How have specific examples in companies in South Africa or globally implemented this concept, and what has been the result?
Yes, I think, I think all companies today are thinking on an integrated basis. And what we at the International Integrated Reporting Council did was we, instead of talking about it ourselves, we got a research house, Black Sun, to research the iconic companies that had adopted integrated thinking and integrated reporting, and asked them what benefits they had achieved through this. And the benefits were enormous. They found that they were, in fact, being able to raise capital more cheaply, that the company worked together more effectively, that the leadership became more efficient because they were thinking on this integrated basis. So there were very positive outcomes. And the huge companies like Shell, HSBC, you can name them around the world, they have all benefited from integrated thinking. No question about it.
Reflecting on your experiences, how do you think businesses have responded to the global challenges of climate change and social inequity? And how do you see their role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030?
Well, I don't think we're going to achieve the goals by 2030. I think it's going to take longer, but we have to achieve them because we only have one planet, and we have this extraordinary situation. We now have 8 billion people on planet Earth. So the demand for product has increased, but the use of natural assets has increased. And natural assets are not being regenerated fast enough to make sure we've got sufficient natural assets to feed, clothe, etc., the 8 billion people on planet Earth. And this is where AI and technology is going to play its role to make sure that companies work on a basis of technology being aided to help make sure that companies can produce what is needed by the 8 billion people on planet Earth. And AI is helping, but the board must remember that they have to have original intellectual thinking. As directors, they owe a duty to the company to have long-term health of the company, and so they can use AI as an aid, but they've got to apply their minds, original intellectual thinking.
And what advice would you have for companies to accelerate progress towards sustainable?
Well, they must think on, they must adopt to do an integrated report and think on an integrated basis. And they must decide which standard the regulator in Turkey, for example, will decide what standard of sustainability reporting will have to be done by Turkish companies. And we have today the EU double materiality standards. That's how the company makes its product and how it does so impacts on those three critical dimensions for sustainable development: the economy, society, and the environment. And also includes how those three elements impact on the value of a company. So economically, we had the example of Lehman Brothers when it collapsed. It affected the balance sheets of companies around the world. From social impacts on the value of a company, best example is the pandemic we've been through. And governance, well, if a company is not well governed, you don't have efficient and effective leadership, well, the company will not be successful. And it's the long-term value creation which is important today, which has replaced the primacy of the shareholder thinking of the 20th century, 19th and 20th century.
Let me end by asking, what is your vision for business in the 21st century, and what steps can we take to achieve it?
My
What
vision
should we
for business in
prioritize?
the 21st century is that hopefully we will achieve the SDGs. I think it'll take another 5 years, longer than 2030. But the bottom line is we have to achieve it. Otherwise, we may not have humanity on this planet by the end of this century. That's where it's going. We've seen the impact of climate change already on planet Earth, the various places where there have been floods and wildfires. And so the thinking of companies around the world, thank heavens, has changed. And they're all thinking on a basis of looking and making business judgment calls and ask the question, well, what impact will this have on the economy, society, and the environment? And they've got to think about that. So directors are protected by the business judgment rule, which means that if they honestly apply their minds and they make a decision which 4 years later turns out to be harmful to the company, strictly they're liable in damages to the company. But the law is developed on the basis that, well, this is inequitable. Because people with reputations have accepted appointments as non-executive directors, and they honestly applied their minds to the matter, but it turned out to be harmful to the company. And so the business judgment rule was developed, which is the following: that the three criteria: if you had no financial interest in the matter; secondly, if objectively speaking, you had all the facts available to you at the time to make that business judgment call; and thirdly, with the wisdom of hindsight, looking backwards, it was a rational business decision at that time. In those circumstances, then you escape liability. So when one is making a business judgment call, one has to think about these criteria of the business judgment rule and make sure, and the AI factors are going to become more important, because we should also ask AI GPT, for example, the question of that you're about to decide, what is their answer to it? And of course, interrogate that completely, because what comes up with an AI GPT answer is biased according to what information has been fed into the system. And you've got to interrogate that to make sure it actually is an aid to your final business judgment call.
Thank you for your time, Professor King. Anything else you would like to share with our audience before we
I'd
end?
just like to congratulate Yilmaz Argüden Consulting Organization. Of course, they've been on top of things. They've realized that governance had to become outcomes-based and mindful and just not a mindless tick box exercise. They also realized, as did the International Federation of Accountants, that to have a financial report and a sustainability report in two silos was divorced from reality, and therefore they advised people on integrated thinking and integrated reporting. And so they're one of the organizations in the world that have changed the thinking of corporations around the world, which can only be positive. And I'm a great believer in corporate reporting illustrates whether the management and the board have been doing their work properly and that the company is being run as a responsible citizen and is adding value to society. So well done, Yilmaz, and your colleagues, and I wish you well for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.